Welcome back to another episode of the Lookout Podcast. I'm joined with the legendary Rene Eustace in his 50th year of firefighting. Rene, thanks again for coming out, man. I appreciate you.
Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah, and we're at the Bell Crossing Fishing Access. Beautiful spot, so it's a great day.
Beautiful day, yeah. Yeah. So the last time you and I did one of these was the Halloween special.
Yeah, one of my favorites. That was a great episode.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and just the story that you were able to come up with, it was so great, and the detail of it was amazing.
It was interesting how that worked out, you know.
Yeah. It was, and I think you told me like a few little cliff notes before we started, so I didn't know the full story.
Well, the story was, and I don't think we talked about it before when we did it that day, but we were trying to figure out something we could do for Halloween that was special, you know, story or something. And so I just got on one of the artificial intelligence sites on the computer, and I just said something to the effect of, create me a story about a fire lookout whose pack string disappears. And it just created this story. And as soon as I read it, remember I called you at home and I went, you got to listen to this. And it was actually pretty cool. And it wasn't too long. So what I decided to do, you and I talked about, and what I decided to do was that it's a story. And so not using any real names of lookouts, but real names of locations and stuff, that I would just kind of use the format that thing presented, because it was really cool.
Yeah.
And then put in the name of a real lookout. And I took it back to 1961 because it was a big fire year, and I wanted to kind of weave that into the story. And out in the Magruder country, Elkhorn Lookout was the one we'd chosen because it was way the hell out there.
Yeah.
But I mean,
no roads even near it.
No, not anywhere near it at all. Yeah. And so it actually worked out pretty cool. And then, you and I were trying to figure out what we could do for Halloween, and you mentioned bringing candles or lanterns and stuff. And I said, oh yeah, I've got some of those battery powered candles that flicker and stuff, and I'll bring some of those.
Yeah.
And then I got the idea of bringing my iPod, which I still have and still has lots of stuff on it, and a little speaker, and we'd play like the first few minutes of Michael Jackson's Thriller. And that's what we did, and it came out really cool.
Oh, it came out really good. Yeah, it was a great intro and a great transition, too. Like, the timing was perfect, and you kind of pre-planned the timing of it, too. So, it worked out great.
I had to be ready, because I knew when I did it at home, and I knew when I wanted to stop the Michael Jackson stuff. And so when it got close to that, I just slipped my hand over and pushed the button on the iPod to shut it off. And then we did the story.
Then writing the story.
It was cool.
Oh, it was really cool. Yeah, and I couldn't believe, just the detail that the artificial intelligence came up with, too, because, like...
it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's not a very well-known thing anymore, like pack strings, like the trade, I guess. It's...
Right.
In the Northwest, we use them. I don't know really... probably in the Southwest a little bit.
They've even used them, in parts of California and stuff, too.
Yeah.
I remember going down to... I don't remember seeing... Yeah, we did see a pack string when we were down there in 87 with the hot shot crew on the Klamath. They were some of the backcountry areas. They were using horse and mule pack strings to take fire supplies into these fires.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah, it feels like a little bit of a dying art, though. Like, it's not as
much.
Common. Yeah,
definitely not as much. We're lucky that we have 9 Mile up here, and that's where all the mules from Region 1, I think, specifically winter there.
Yeah, it's a cool spot for folks who've never been to 9 Mile. Like, winter is a good time to go check it out, because it's the historic ranger station, also part of the birthplace of smoke jumping.
I've never been there. So,
you never have?
One of the when you came up to Salmon 2 years ago when we closed, the guy who was packing, he had already known that he was going to have a job at 9 Mile.
Yeah.
Get an appointment and be at 9 Mile, and he is. And he's invited me to come up there, and I should do it sometime.
You should, yeah, because that was John, right?
Yeah, John.
Yeah, what a great guy, and what a great position, because now he's like head of the pack string or the animals of the whole Region 1, I think.
I think so, yeah.
And it's just very cool in the winter because, like you said, all the pack animals from the whole region
they're all there.
Winter there. Yeah, so you got this giant herd, and John takes care of them all winter, and it's just so cool to see.
Yeah, I think he helps, with taking the hay out to feed them, and I'm not sure how they do that, if they have a a horse-drawn wagon or something that has all kinds of hay on it. I'm really not sure.
I'm not sure. That would be very cool. I helped out a long time ago with the fellow who was doing it before him. And yeah, it was cool because I didn't realize even they had some pasture that's a little bit more out towards the mountains there in the woods. And that's where, just a pile of mules came around when they heard the truck because they knew what was going on. But
that's really neat.
But that was, that was when there was a bunch of snow on the ground, I think. So I'm hoping they do like a horse-drawn thing most of the time because that would add to the specialness of that place,
Yeah, that'd be cool. But this is the first time you and I've gotten together since Halloween, so it's been a while. And I don't think I've listened to all the podcasts between then and now that you've done with people, but I have listened to some of them. And I thought Russ Bazell, our buddy Russ, who is the head prevention guy at the supervisor's office here in Hamilton now, he and his two cohorts, Amanda and Caitlin, why don't we talk a little bit about the fires last summer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Russ put together, with their help, he put together this sort of a document called the 2024 Fire Year in Review.
Oh, perfect.
Have you seen this?
No, briefly, but I didn't really go through it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and they did a lot of work. They contacted all the districts to find out how many fires they did, and then they had pictures that people had taken and that sort of thing.
Very cool.
And so, yeah, a lot of people probably know a little bit about what happened last summer, but this kind of gives a good synopsis, of exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So if it's cool with you, I'll just
absolutely
read some of this and we can talk a little bit about it or whatever, and I'll fill some folks in on what my part of it was out at West Fork last summer too.
Yeah.
Which was cool.
Yeah.
So Russ said there's a caveat here that the SO didn't accumulate as much information as they have in the past. So what they have here is what they gleaned from the districts. And so, he and Amanda and Caitlin said it's probably not totally accurate, but it's close.
Yeah, definitely ballpark, right?
Total numbers of fires and stuff like that, because they do a pretty good job of keeping track of all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it said local wildfire statistics. So that's for this forest. Firefighters responded to a total of 118 fires this summer on the Bitterroot National Forest. 108 of them, are you hearing me okay?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
108 of those fires were caused by lightning. 10 were human caused. So most all of them were lightning fires.
Yeah.
And that's probably kind of a good thing that there weren't that many man-caused fires. I know there was a lot of information both on television and I'm sure on radio about the dryness and that it was conceivably going to be a big fire year.
Yeah.
And I think people were more careful.
I think so too, yeah. And I think some of the education stuff's coming through about like people just being a little smarter with like, their chains on their trailers and campfires and all those things and just burning in your backyard too.
Yep, all that stuff. It said that 5 of the fires were mutual aid fires that involved also not only Forest Service people, but fire departments. So those primarily would have been fires that were down toward the lower end of the valley that, where there might be homes or homes not far away. So the rural fire department comes out, but the Forest Service also comes out if it's close enough to the national forest. Yeah, and
for folks who don't know, usually when you get the local volunteers coming, they bring a ton of water with them. So it's so helpful in that.
They do. They have some pretty big tankers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty good pumps, big pumps too. Some of them I remember from 2000 that if you got a water source close by, they can get you a lot of water.
Yeah, and a quicker response time because everyone calls 911 first. So usually the volunteers hear it, and then it works its way down to the Forest Service. So they're usually first on scene. So it's huge help having those folks in the wildland urban interface.
Yeah, it's really cool. Let's see. So it says, in terms of national assignments, the Bitterroot Forest sent a total of 618 personnel and support resources off forest for national wildfire assignments. A lot of that 618 wasn't necessarily 618 different people. It would be stuff like the hotshot crew going, a number of times, or people going to more than one incident, and so they're all counted as a certain number of personnel for every incident.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but it because I don't think we have 618 people.
No, I don't think so.
Individually, you could send off and have anybody around,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it said of that there were 561 overhead positions that were filled, 38 engine assignments, and fire camp crews, which probably would have included folks from Trapper,
Yeah.
because they've had camp crews for a long time that they can send out,
Yeah.
and aircraft. So the helicopter occasionally would go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then to back up just a little bit, Russ had put in the segment about fuel treatment last spring. So they did a lot of stuff on this forest as far as burning last spring.
Yeah.
Said this year, meaning 2024, 20,882 acres of fuel treatment were accomplished. Examples of treatments included thinning of dense stands of trees, prescribed fire, and other fuels treatments to make the forest better able to withstand unwanted effects from wildfires. Treatments included hand piling, mechanical treatment, creating fuel breaks to achieve the desired objectives for a specific area. Often, thinning and slashing treatments are followed by prescribed fire to effectively reduce hazardous fuels. There were 8,466 acres worth of broadcast burns, 1,537 acres of pile burns, 4,438 acres were thinned and or slashed, 2,607 acres were piled, and commercial treatment was done on another 500 acres. So
Pretty good numbers.
really good numbers,
especially for our forest being a little bit smaller.
West Fork had a lot of stuff going on last spring, and I don't remember. I'll find it if Russ mentioned it in here. But talking to David Fox, who's the head fuels guy out at West Fork, last spring, they actually used some ignition via drones.
Oh,
yeah, not
cool.
Big drones, but ones that had, I guess, kind of like the ping pong balls, that they use for wildfires and stuff like that. Yeah, and he said that everything was computerized for the drones. They had, maps of routes that they wanted to go on because they wanted to keep it away from a boundary where a fire line was. So they knew exactly where they wanted to go, and they could program this in ahead of time. And there was a person who was the drone operator who David would a lot of times be right next to them, and they'd start the process, and via the cameras in the drone they could watch it.
Oh, man.
They could also see the terrain, in person looking at it, but they could watch the drone and make sure it was where they wanted it to be, and it would follow the exact course that they had programmed into it.
Oh, very cool.
And making turns and everything, and they used it quite a bit. They still use folks along the line because, generally speaking, you and I have done enough burning that you want people on the line that you can talk to and have them burn the edge the way the person that's in charge of that holding and stuff like that.
Yeah, because
what they want them to do.
Add more or less fire to it if it's not taken or if it's taken too much. And
depending on what's going on further in, you can adjust whether you want to light some that's going to suck back out into that, or vice versa. So
yep, totally.
Anyway, it's kind of cool that they did.
Really cool.
They did a bunch of that.
Less exposure for the folks, who you typically would have to be in the helicopter, either doing the terror torch or the PSD machine,
Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of training that got done last summer. I know more about West Fork than the other districts because I was out there almost every day for quite a while.
Yeah.
But they got IC type quals for some of the folks, that were fairly new.
Yeah.
But they had the opportunity to do enough assignments, especially those that had come back from the year before, or maybe had come from somewhere else and started that kind of training. And they got a lot of that done. They got a lot of engine quals, all kinds of stuff. I don't think so many helicopter crew member deals, but some.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they got a lot of training done. And I'm sure Darby Sula probably did too, because those were really the two districts other than what was going on up towards St. Mary's and Stevensville.
Yeah.
The bulk of it was down in the southern districts.
Yeah, it was a busy year because even I did the refresher here in Stevensville, and even they had I think 10 more fires than typical year than their average year. So I mean
That's cool.
the whole forest got a little bit heavier fire load this year.
Yeah. Yeah, so it says in relation to the lookouts that during the 2024 fire season, fire lookouts detected 41 starts on the Bitterroot. I think it's actually probably more than that because West Fork had 54 fires and lookouts found about 40 of them.
Oh wow!
And that was just on that district.
Yeah.
So
So who knows what like Deer Mountain?
most of the starts that the lookouts found were, especially on West Fork, were lightning starts, because there's not that much in eroded country and where there are homes other than just in the main corridor up the Nez for a ways and up above Painted Rocks Lake, and other than that for West Fork, just the corridor along Highway West Fork Road from the turnoff, from south of Darby there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the deeper you get in, the less people. That's for sure.
Yeah. A couple of the things that happened related to the lookouts on the forest was that McCart was definitely threatened by a couple of those fires out there, and it ended up needing to be wrapped.
Yeah.
And I saw some pictures just a week before last when I was out there tying in with Brett and Chris. Talked to Tanya Neidhart, and she was heavily involved in wrapping projects last summer.
Yeah.
And she showed me some photos, and she had one of McCart that even after it was wrapped, they had taken a picture. It's an old L4 on a wooden tower, not a high one, like maybe 15 feet above the ground.
Yeah.
But there was like a foot-sized, meaning 12 inches, round spot fire right at the base of one of those supports. The supports had been wrapped.
Yeah.
But, so there were things that got close.
Yeah, I got really close. And because I think you were telling me that Sula Peak was wrapped before the fires came through of 2000, and it's still burnt down. So
yeah,
it can happen.
That was kind of the start of doing much wrapping back in days. Tanya was there, worked on Sula prevention tech then.
Yeah.
And she and I had talked about that quite a bit about Sula Peak burning up, and they did as good a job as they could with what wrap that they had, and they did have it pretty well wrapped. But what she and I both think happened when you could drive up after the fire had gone through there, that turnoff road, by Warm Springs. Is it Warm Springs Campground?
Spring Gulch.
Spring Gulch there. Yeah, Spring Gulch. When you get in the canyon and start winding up, there's one area where there's just a huge, dense stringer of trees in this sort of little canyon gulch thing that goes almost all the way up to the top from way down below, and that's probably 3/4 of a mile in distance. And that got completely nuked out. And the feeling is, obviously nobody was up there at all or close to it when the big blow happened.
Yeah.
But that's probably what happened, is that whole drainage, just funneled
big
with high
chimney
winds, went up there. Wrap can only... Wind is an enemy of wrap.
Yeah, I can
Wind is an
understand
enemy
so much.
of anything fire-wise.
Yeah.
And so they think that it probably just found a weak spot, and that was that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Shit.
But, it completely destroyed it. The only thing left was the cement block base.
The concrete, like footings? Yeah.
Yeah, the wall. Did I send you a picture of that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so, but I think it's been a while since I looked at it.
Yeah. The whole wooden lookout just completely collapsed right into the base. Jeez. And all burned up, and the refrigerator and the electronic stuff that was down there, all that, everything was just completely fried. There was for a while, there was a puddle like of aluminum that had run out the door of the base from something that melted down there.
Jeez, and a little side note, just because it's on my brain, because we just talked about it too, is like the BTUs from that one, was it Indian Ridge fire or something you were just telling me about that melted a whole bridge because it got so hot?
Oh, that was the Sundance fire in Idaho in 1967.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, there's pictures, and it was a big fire. I think it totaled if I'm remembering correctly, it totaled to around 60,000 acres. The Bitterroot IR crew went over there. I don't know if they were there at the time of that particular event, but it nuked out this entire gigantic drainage, and the drainage had some roads in it. And there was a picture of a steel bridge that completely melted and was melted in the shape of the drainage. It actually had melted down into where the water had been. It's just crazy.
How crazy is that?
Somehow or other, they were able to do some BTU studies, and at the height of that 20 hours or whatever of that gigantic, massive run, they figured that it put out some of the equivalent BTUs of the Hiroshima bomb.
How wild is that, man?
Yeah.
There'd be no surviving that, you know?
No. So that's what we figure happened to Sula Peak.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The puddle kind of reminded me of that story you told me.
But the flagpole with the American flag
really
was still there, and it didn't burn.
Wow, the flag was on there too? Dang.
Yeah, because I got to go up there about 3 days after. I mean, the fire burned so intensely and so hot that there was some stuff smoking, but there was no danger other than keeping your eyes open for snags and stuff.
Yeah.
I was able to drive all the way to the top. Yeah, and I took some pictures when you get up, right to the turnoff where you're aimed right at it.
Yeah.
Where the old lookout was, which was right where the new one is now. But the flagpole and the flag were still right there.
Man, that flagpole had to be red hot at some point.
Yeah,
I
can't believe it. Yeah. But anyway, kind of digressed. But and then late in the summer, a fire started out between Bear Cone and Castle Rock. Actually, I was in the process of driving some food and fuel on the Nez Road out to Nez Pass to tie in with some of our folks that were out on the way to the Salmon Road, the road out towards Salmon there, the Elk City Road.
Yeah.
And I heard a helicopter actually spotted this fire. Mark spotted it almost the same exact time as the helicopter, and the helicopter checked it out real quick, and they were afraid that it was going to come to Bear Cone, so they immediately, talked to West Fork and got Mark on the road driving down. Just grab what you can and just go. And the helicopter said, "I'm going to stay right here so I can watch you drive down to make sure everything's okay." And luckily, the fire didn't make a big, massive push then, so he safely was able to get out.
Oh, good.
And then it was decided that just because nobody knew for sure what was going to happen, that Tanya headed up part of the West Fork Fire Crew, and they went up there the next day and wrapped it.
Oh,
and
good.
They got some cool pictures of that. And then that whole day that they were wrapping it, they assigned Ben to not do so much wrapping, but mainly to just keep his eyes on the fire to make sure that it wasn't making a move toward, the wrappers, because they're too busy doing stuff to have to worry about that. So it works to have somebody who's really experienced, watching out. But they bombed it all day with helicopters and stuff. Yeah, and they pretty much took care of it.
Oh, good.
So then maybe a week and a half later, they decided to unwrap it. I got to go up and help do that.
Oh, cool.
So that was interesting.
Man, between you and Tanya, you guys got lots of years of rapping,
Yeah, she did some of that stuff way back, like I said, in 2000. And then, she helped us do some stuff during the 2001 through 2016 era when I was there, when we wrapped a lot of stuff.
Yeah. One of the shows, too, because she didn't have a big window of time, I don't think, to wrap McCart last year. And she did a heck of a job because it's still there,
She did. They did a really good job. The original wrap job was not a good one, and it was just because the people that did it were inexperienced. Wasn't their fault at all.
No.
They didn't have any guidance, and then the wrap started coming off right away, and that was kind of like, what? That shouldn't happen.
But I know I saw a video, because I think Sophie and Teepee took that photo, and you can see just a big arm of wrap kind of reaching out from the wind. And it's like, oh no.
So Tanya went back up the next day with some of the same folks, and I think some others, and did the complete really good wrap.
Reinforcing some areas probably. And
reinforced everything. I mean, they had to rip a lot of it off and just basically start over. But
gotcha.
They got taken care of. And
there's a process to it, and done right, though. I mean, it works really good.
I think the only other thing West Fork had to wrap, other than out in the Magruder corridor from Magruder, where the ranger station turnoff is, out to where you cross the bridge and head up the Elk City Road toward Salmon and all that stuff. They wrapped those bridges.
Oh yeah.
They wrapped Cooper's Flat Cabin up above the Paradise Cabin. I think Paradise might have gotten wrapped too.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of signs and different things. And I'm trying to remember if they had to. I don't think they wrapped Horse Heaven.
Oh, really? Didn't have
I can't really remember for sure, but I don't remember hearing anything about it. They might have though.
Yeah.
But quite a lot of stuff got wrapped.
Yeah. It was a big year.
Crazy. And then it says that the dispatch center here in Hamilton at the SO was staffed 7 days a week starting on July 9th. And they pretty much were on 7 days a week until everything was done at the end of October.
Man, that's a long run.
Yeah. 24-hour-a-day staffing. And I know Craig Claremont got to come in. Craig worked at Sula on the fire crew. He was there when I went back from the Hot Shot cruise. That would have been in 96, 97.
Oh, yeah.
But he teaches school over at Corvallis.
Yeah, he's the man.
Language, French, stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
But
I knew he did.
But yeah, he's really into, when he gets the opportunity during the summer, if he's around, coming into dispatch and doing the night shifts and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool.
Great asset to have.
Yeah. And he's done it so much that he knows the drill. He knows exactly what's going on. Fixed wing aircraft last summer flew 178 hours worth. And they had some special infrared operation capable aircraft that did stuff at night to kind of map terrain and where fires were. I know they've done that a lot in the past. When West Fork would have big fires every morning, they didn't necessarily map every day, but they mapped a lot of stuff, and maybe every other day. And they do it at night, and it'd all be on the computer by morning. And I remember David, we'd all come in early, and David would come in and he would download that stuff, and he'd go over to our big map board in dispatch. You've seen it at West Fork.
Yeah.
And he would draw the changes in the outlines of all these fires. We had a lot of big fires, some of those years all going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And I've got pictures of him down there, erasing stuff and marking more acreage and that sort of thing.
Yeah, some fire growth.
Keep track of that sort of stuff so that they know if there's any resources, let's say, in between some big fires, or if it's getting closer to roads or bridges, or, we might have to wrap Magruder or whatever.
Yep, totally. Yeah.
All that stuff.
Have your trigger points set when it hits those and make a new plan.
It's pretty interesting, all the stuff that goes on, when there are fires happening.
It is. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. And they used a number of different kinds of helicopters, from sky cranes and stuff like that to, the ones like our Bell Jet Ranger that can drop water, but a smaller amount.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And then he just did we've already talked about pretty much what the rest of it has, just what happened on the different districts and stuff. And West Fork had a lot, and Darby Sula had not so many numbers of fires, but the ones they did have required a lot of effort to deal with. And then kind of later on, there was some in the boundary area over on the east side here between Darby and Stevensville. And then, of course, Stevensville had the
Sherritt fire.
The Sherritt fire, which,
Yeah, there was no stopping that one. It came in that nasty storm, and the wind was whipping. I mean, they were wanting to get some aviation out right away. Cause
one of the ladies who's kind of in charge of the St. Mary's volunteer lookout group, was telling me, I talked to her a few weeks ago, and I said, I haven't got a chance to talk to you about any of that. And he said, the guy that was at St. Mary's when that fire broke out, that was his first day up there.
No.
Yeah.
That poor guy.
And he'd barely gotten up there, and all of a sudden this fire just takes off in the wind from the south, blowing off in that direction. And he got evacuated. I think he'd only been staffing for a matter of a few hours, and they pulled him off.
Yeah, geez. I was wondering how they got him out of there because the winds were going so much. And that
I don't think he hiked down. I'm pretty sure that she said that the helicopter came and got
That's
it.
what I was thinking.
Got him out of there, and they didn't have time to wrap it or anything. I don't know if they ever did, really.
I don't know if they did either. Yeah, and that shared fire, the way it was tracking, because I was on my way home when it started, and you could see it looked like it was working its way towards the lookout and cutting off the roads to St. Mary's Lookout. And I don't know if it ever did, but that's just kind of the track it was on, you know.
Right. But yeah, it's like you work on, like, all the stuff I did was down at the south end of the valley, and I'd go to West Fork, and I mean, I can't see St. Mary's or any of that stuff from my house,
No.
south of Darby. And it was like it was on another planet.
Totally
but
on your
we'd
own
hear
island.
about it every day, in the briefings and all the information. When they do the SO would do the morning fire updates for the FMOs and AFMOs on all the districts. Everybody would, not everybody, but those folks. So it would be Brett and Chris and David at West Fork would sit in on the briefings and see what was going on in the other districts, and then they'd give a blurb about what West Fork had going and what they had planned to do, what they were planning on doing that day, and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
It is, yeah. West Fork's far enough out there where, like you said, it's its own world out that way.
Yeah.
A lot of ground to cover too.
So that was basically, kind of the analysis of, but there's a bunch of cool pictures in here. I think Russ might have posted this online. If you hadn't and you want, you can get a hold of him and he can email it to you. That's how I got this one.
Yeah. I thought I got maybe an email, but I'll have to check when I get back to work on Monday.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so I got involved a little bit last summer, which is neat. 2 years ago, so let's see, 2022, West Fork had that Indian Ridge fire out up above the road from Magruder to Paradise. And it started getting pretty big, and it was a let burn fire, basically. But it started deciding that it was going to kind of do what it wanted to, which is the way that stuff works, especially when it dries out.
Totally.
And it was working its way down toward the road between Magruder and Paradise. So the fire crew at West Fork, along with some visiting resources and maybe some folks from some of the other districts, got involved, and they were out there for the better part of a month or more, a little more, doing recons of where the fire was, and wrapping some of the outhouses in the campgrounds and this, that, and the other.
Oh yeah.
So Brett picked me up during that as an AD to drive fuel out to the folks that were working down there. Or out there.
Yeah.
And they were spread out all over the place. I mean, some of them had to go up and close the road at Observation Point, the Elk City Road.
Yeah.
Close it at some points, open it at others. And, then there was that other fire out there that made a run toward Horse Heaven Cabin and all that sort of thing. So, Brett picked me up, and what my job was is that one of the Ford F-250 pickups at West Fork has in the back of it, it has an assembly that's got a 50-gallon diesel and a 50-gallon gasoline, 2 tanks.
Yeah.
And you could pump out of it electrically.
Oh yeah.
And so he picked me up, since he knew that there was going to be a lot of resources out there to drive basically fuel out to those folks. Although I did take a trailer on occasion that had all kinds of pallets of water and MREs and different things like that. But drove a lot of fuel out there.
I bet, man.
So every morning I'd go to the station at 7, get there at 7, and Brett, we were getting the bulk of the fuel for that particular assignment at People's Market, because they have gas and diesel pumped there.
Oh yeah.
And so I'd go in and had to use these certain codes, and
Top off the tanks.
To fill the tanks and all that. And then I'd go back to the station and see if he had any other needs of things that I could take out there. I mean, I couldn't take too much. Those tanks didn't take up the whole bed, but the bed also had a jack, and other equipment in it too. Yeah, so I'd go out there and I'd call them. I'd call whoever was the IC. There were a couple of different ICs because they were doing different functions in different parts of that area.
Yeah.
And find out, what the fuel needs were. And I mean, 50 gallons isn't really that much per tank.
No.
And so we'd have to kind of prioritize. I'd have to have them tell me, where do you want me to go and which vehicles are the priority right now.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. I'd meet up with those folks and, give them 10 gallons or, whatever they needed. I don't think I ever had to come back in and go all the way back to town and get more in a single day, but I went out virtually every single day.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah. For about a month.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Russ and the folks wrapped Magruder during that.
I was going to ask.
They didn't wrap all the buildings. They wrapped parts of some of the buildings, but we've come up over the years with a pretty dandy sprinkler system out there.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because by that small bridge, not the stone bridge on the entryway, but there's on the compound there's that stone bridge that goes over to where they used to have back in the old days when it was an independent ranger station. They had trailer houses and stuff over there for summer employees and everything. And on that bridge, there's a beach right below it, which is just a perfect spot. You can put a ton of Mark III pumps there if you want.
Oh, beautiful.
And we had done that over before they'd done it before 2000, but from 2001 to 2016 when I was there, we did a lot of stuff out there at Magruder.
Yeah.
We had to protect it a bunch of times, and so we came up with these plans and drawings of where we wanted the hoses to go to, and how many sprinklers to use, and then it got refined over the years. Wes Glasser, who was a temporary that did a lot of maintenance stuff, and he was a fire guy too.
Oh yeah.
Good sawyer. Wes came up with this idea right before 2013 when Golpan threatened Magruder. Wes came up with this idea because before, some of the roofs on those buildings you've seen at Magruder, especially that big long, what we all called the shop building.
Yep.
The roof was super steep.
It is.
And it was pretty dangerous for people to try and crawl up there. And what they had to do was they had to put a ladder up and crawl up to the peak of the roof. And then they created this 2x4 framework with a metal riser with a sprinkler on it.
Oh.
And they'd put anywhere from 2 to 3 of those over the length of that building so they could cover the whole thing. And then the hose would just, have to be carried up and hooked onto it.
Jeez.
Well, it was pretty dangerous. I mean, It was really dangerous. So Wes came up with this idea that we don't really have to do that. Why don't we just we'll figure out how high we want it to be, and we'll buy galvanized pipe and have it turned so that you can hook them together, 6 or 8 foot lengths of it, and you can get it up to, and the top one will have the sprinkler on it.
Yeah.
And you can hook them on the ends or the sides of buildings or both, and nobody has to get up on top.
Smart.
And it's been done out there probably at least 3 times now, 3 or 4 times, and it works great.
Oh, yeah.
So Russ was by himself. He was out there one day when I was there. The rest of the crew were doing other jobs, and he was setting that stuff up. So I got there just about the time that he'd finished setting it up and was getting ready to test it out. So got to hang out with him after we fired the pumps up, and we walked from building to building and checked the sprinklers, and some of them the heads weren't adjusted quite properly, so we'd have to shut it off and then
tweak things,
get it down, so you could readjust it and stuff, and get the water to go out to the proper distance you wanted, and make sure that the coverage was getting everything. So I took a bunch of photos of that, and I'd done it before in 2013 during Golpan. So I'd given West Fork all those photos, and they had actually kind of put together. It's like a how-to photo album thing with drawings of exactly what you needed for Magruder, like how many risers, how many sprinkler heads, how many gas cans, how many Mark III pumps, and then of course spares were figured into the totals too, because you know how Mark IIIs are. They either work really good or they work really good and they stop working, and then you can't get them to work again.
Yeah, the old saying was it two is one, two Mark IIIs is one Mark III, and one is none because they're not really reliable.
If you need 4, you order 8.
Yeah,
you know, and that's what we do too.
Yeah, totally.
I remember one time during probably maybe 2013 or 2012 when we were doing that stuff, we'd have to order all that stuff from the fire cache, the big fire cache up in Missoula, because that's where they have jillions of everything. And so they had figured out what they wanted for Magruder at that particular point in time. And I got to call the cache, and read this list off to them.
Yeah.
And then the gal who was in charge of the cache, she called back like a few minutes later, and she's like, "Why do you people need all these pumps for a wilderness fire?" That came up.
Yeah, good question.
And it's like, because the fire is conceivably going to threaten the historic
Ranger Station of Magruder.
on the register landmark,
Yep.
Magruder Ranger Station, and we have to protect it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, she understood then, but it was
Totally.
like, why do you guys need 20,000 feet of hose and all these pumps and all these different things?
And you could see on her end being a head scratcher. You're like, what's going on out there? And
But as soon as I explained to her what it was for, then she was totally
"Oh."
cool with it. And the big truck came and brought it, and we took it out there.
Oh, it's so handy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, then having that playbook is huge, right? Because you've been off the forest a lot on an area where you've never been before, and get an assignment that you've never done before, and you're like, well, I guess, and all of us fire folks I think are pretty ingenuitive. Like we figure it out,
Yeah.
There's a problem.
Well,
we're problem solvers.
That's what's cool about that. And we also had stuff on Horse Heaven Cabin.
Really?
And yeah, Paradise Cabin.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. Even for like protecting bridges, what you'd need, in the way of a pump and sprinklers, risers, tripods, whatever, to protect all that stuff. So West Fork's got it pretty wired now.
Yeah, wired. That's a great way.
We did our homework, and it's paid off now because, theoretically, as long as if another visiting crew, if they're experienced, they could go out and set it up.
Yeah, without ever being there.
Might
before.
take them a little longer than the West Forkers because they hadn't done it before, but it's pretty self-explanatory with the drawings and where everything goes and
all
that stuff.
And like you said, if you've had any experience on that kind of stuff, it's pretty universal stuff. It's just like the placement and all the tools and if you had to run like back and forth, because I think other places you go, it's not that bad if you had to run back to the ranger station and get something. But man, you got to go to Magruder and then get back to West Fork. That's a whole day event.
It's a long way.
Yeah.
And so and like I said, we had extras of everything built into that plan too.
Smart,
just in case something broke. If you theoretically needed 50 sprinkler heads, sprinklers, you'd send another 10 or 15 along, so that, and the same with gas cans or the deal on Mark III pumps. If you need 4, you order 8.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Redundancies, right?
Redundancies built into the thing.
Yeah, smart. That's just great planning.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. But anyway, this thing's neat, and yeah, you can get a copy of it pretty easy.
Yeah, I'll have to
just talk to Russ.
Yeah, I think I got an email, but if not, I'll have to bug him. And then I don't want to skip ahead on kind of what you want to talk about, but I also want to talk about last summer among your duties. I think it was right. Corn Creek.
I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah.
So what I got to do this last summer when West Fork started having fires they'd had some before the last week and a half of July, but that's when the Hughes fire and that other one was out in the West Fork backcountry, unroaded but not wilderness, kind of behind, so it'd be to the west of Lost Trail Pass.
Oh, yeah.
Those 2 fires Christy found real early on in that probably last week. And so West Fork could tell that it was going to be a long, probably siege.
Yeah, kind of a campaign
so I got
fire.
picked up as an AD again, but this time I got picked up to not necessarily deliver fuel, but to deliver food and supplies. So People's Market got the contract for hot meals.
Oh, nice.
And also, the big fire cache in Missoula always gets involved with all of this sort of stuff because they're the closest distribution point. But West Fork started needing pumps and all kinds of stuff. So the ICs of the fires, which were jumpers, at least at the beginning of those two fires, Hughes and the other one. And then they immediately needed help because they were going to need help. The fire started getting pretty good size.
Yeah.
And so
do you know, did they jump it?
they did originally.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, they were able to do that.
Yeah, makes sense. It's out there.
Yeah, I think the trail was far enough away that it would have been pretty hassly to try and do that.
That's what I understood too. Yeah.
But yeah, they got so they immediately started putting in orders to West Fork via the cell phone. Worked out there.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes they'd work in places, and other times there was no signal. But
how strange.
They were able to get it to work.
Nice.
And Gabe Nevin was the jumper in charge. He was the IC Type 3 trainee on the Hughes fire.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd been on the district crew with us when I was still there in like 2011 and 12 and maybe 13.
Oh, cool.
And then after that, he did Hell Attack, and he was on the Bitterroot Hotshot crew for a season, and then he rappelled for a season, and then he jumped.
Jeez, that guy's got a lot of experience.
Now he's still jumping,
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was the IC out there, and he knew West Fork, and he knew the drill, and so he'd call Brett and or Chris, the AFMO, and every morning or whenever he needed to put in a supply order and make sure they had what they want.
Yeah.
So all that stuff had come down to Darby for those particular fires anyway. And so what my job, and one of the gals, Rose from the Hotshot crew, you know her.
Yeah, Rose is great. Yeah.
Rose is cool. So
she's
Rose,
awesome.
the Hotshot crew, when all the stuff in late July started, they had just gotten back from a roll to some 14-day roll to somewhere, and she twisted her ankle. And so they immediately, they had their couple of days off, and they got another fire to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But she couldn't go because she hadn't been cleared yet with the ankle. It was still a little bit tender.
Yeah.
So she spent those first 2 weeks with me, and she and I were one of the teams delivering stuff.
Very
and so
cool.
they'd bring all those supplies from the cache, pumps, everything, anything you could think of that was needed, extra chainsaws, gas cans, anything, hose.
Oil. Yeah.
They've got it all. They'd bring it down to Darby, and Monty and Dusty, they were the logistics. She was the trainee, and Monty was the logistics chief.
Yep.
And so all this stuff had come, and then Monty and Dusty would help figure out where they wanted Rose and I to go, or other people. There were other people taking stuff different places too.
Oh, yeah.
And so it turned out that probably the bulk of what we did for those at least the first week and a half, or maybe almost 2 weeks, was based out of Darby, because it was to support those two fires on West Fork that were in the backcountry.
Oh, yeah.
And the best way to get stuff to them was for us to transport it, sometimes with trailers behind our truck, up to the parking lot of the ski area at Lost Trail Pass.
Oh, really?
Which, there's nobody there during the summer. There's a few maintenance folks that work for the ski area that were doing stuff, but it's basically a gigantic, empty, huge space.
Yeah.
And so we'd drive up there and help offload it, and then the helicopter would take sling loads of whatever they needed up to where the fires were.
Oh, awesome.
And then they'd bring the backhaul back, and then we'd stick around sometimes they would have already sent the backhaul back to that same spot, and we'd load it up and take it back to Darby, and then Monty and Dusty would, figure out the logistics of getting all the backhaul stuff that was trash primarily, or broken things, back up to the cache or wherever it needed to go. And we'd go over to People's Market. So they got fresh food every other day, but they had MREs and other stuff. But the plan was that when the coolers went up, there'd be hot meals that'd go up every late afternoon for them to have in the evening. And then there'd be other coolers that had ice in them, and those would have the lunches and the breakfasts for that next day.
Oh, nice.
So every other day we'd redo all of that and take more up. And we'd have to go over to People's Market and help fill the coolers that had things that had to be on ice with ice, And I've got pictures of all of this stuff. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing, that most of the fire crew folks, unless they've been around for a pretty long time, they never see any of this that goes on in the background. It's like, do you really know how all the food gets to you guys? I mean, what it takes? And they didn't. So
No.
I'd fill in the West Forkers, the folks on the crew, when they'd rotate back in from these different places, that there's more going on in the background than you can ever imagine.
Absolutely.
And this isn't even like a gigantic siege fire like stuff in Los Angeles or anything, but there's a lot going on as far as getting things, getting you guys what you need.
Totally, yeah. It's not just the boots on the ground, it's all the support.
Yeah. So then when that kind of got taken care of, then West Fork had other fires that were out toward the Elk City Road, and then they had 2 wilderness fires that were out there on the Idaho portion of West Fork on the main Salmon River.
Oh, yes.
A lot of people don't even know that West Fork goes out that far.
Yeah.
But it does. And that's all wilderness. There are no roads out there at all.
Yes.
And so the 2 fires were fires that were being allowed to do stuff naturally. But we have Blackie Foster Cabin and Lance Barr Cabin. Lance Barr specifically is a historic site from way back when Frank's Lance homesteaded back there in the early 1900s and did a lot of fire stuff. He'd get picked up like a lot of those old hermits that were back in there. The Forest Service would run a phone line a lot of times all the way from a ranger station to those remote spots, like, hey, we've got a fire. Can you help us out? And sure. And Frank Lance had pack animals and everything at his place, and so he'd help fight fires.
I had no idea.
Haul supplies to fires.
That is cool.
And so that was a very important site down there.
Yeah.
And
there's an orchard there too, isn't there?
There's an apple orchard.
Yeah.
I think there were other trees of different kinds, but there's an apple orchard that's still there, and it still produces apples.
That's cool.
And a lot of those trees are heritage apples. They're kinds that you don't commonly see anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So West Fork has a small tree at the compound right below the ranger station there on the lawn that has a graft from one of those trees.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
it'll produce heritage apples.
That's cool. I'll have to check that out.
Kind.
Yeah.
So we had to have people down there. West Fork had to have folks down there to monitor those fires and dig little stretches of line if they needed to and burn out if they needed to. And they did have to do, not a lot of that, but some. But they were presence down there for probably a month and a half.
Yeah, it seemed like a long time.
Long time. 4 or 5 people, sometimes more, depending if the fire required them to be able to have people at both of those locations at the same time.
Yeah.
And so the most efficient way to get them what they needed, food and supplies, wasn't by taking it all in by helicopter. It was the main Salmon River has a road that runs from North Fork on Highway 93 all the way down to a boat launch at Corn Creek. That's the name of the creek. And there's a boat launch there, and back maybe a mile and a half or so at Cache Bar, there's another boat launch.
Oh.
And now that country, is primarily, they've been there, those boat launches have been there for a long time, but now they're primarily there because rafting and kayaking is such a gigantic thing on that river.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. But the Corn Creek, that's the end of the road. The road ends at Corn Creek, and then for 70 or 80 miles, it's pure wilderness. There's no roads whatsoever
awesome.
Until you get down toward Whitebird and Riggins, way down at the other end.
Yeah.
So the way to get them their supplies and food was me
Yeah.
and a few others, but me primarily driving food and supplies down to Corn Creek. And from West Fork to Corn Creek, round trip is 212 miles.
Woo, I did not know that. I
And
knew
I
it was
ma-
out there.
I made 15 trips, so over 3,100 miles worth of drives just to Corn Creek. And the way they were getting the supplies, because they were a number of miles. The first place that they were working at was Lance Bar, and then Blackie was another few miles down further than that, was jet boats.
Oh, gotcha.
So there's a ranch that's really pretty close to Corn Creek, which has one of the contracts during the summer, not only for fires, to haul supplies to fires on the jet boats, but to do other stuff related to, some people go down there and they do day trips, float jet boat trips to see the canyon, because it's just so spectacular down there and everything.
Yeah, geez, I'd never seen it until and I still haven't seen it in person.
We're gonna have to drive down there so you can see it. I mean, it's
because the photos you took were amazing.
Yeah, most of my trips down there, which weren't a real lot, were further downriver when I was on the Bitterroot Hotshot crew, because we went to fires down there.
Oh, yeah.
And we went to a lot of fires down there in '85, but never jet boated. Did a few times, but not very many. But
how'd you get in? Floating?
Huh?
How'd you get into the fires? Helicopter?
Well, some of the fires, we either helicoptered in, or some of them we had to hike in from like Red River and Dixie in that country. One particular big fire we went to down there, it was like a 12-mile hike from where he started to the river.
One way.
And then it would have been another 5 or 6 miles to the fire. And it was middle of summer. It was really hot, And by the time we got down there, we were pretty beat just from the heat and stuff.
Yeah.
And we were hanging out at this ranch, Shep Ranch, which is now privately owned, and it's a visitor where people can come in and hang out, and
a guest ranch, kind of like.
Yeah, catch fish and do whatever. Yeah. And we were prepping ourselves for the next 6 miles, which would have been the hardest part of the trip, because the bottom of that canyon is really hot down there.
Yeah.
And they called and said, "You guys are lucking out because there's a jet boat coming to take you down to the fire."
Oh, perfect.
So had to make a couple of trips to get us all down there, but we really lucked out. But
yeah,
so I'd go to Corn Creek, and this ranch that provided the jet boat for this particular activity was down on the river, and you could see it. It wasn't far from Corn Creek. And they, up on the roadway, at the edge of the roadway, they had this like box that you could open up, and it was a telephone thing, but it was like a walkie-talkie.
Oh.
And you just take it off the hook, and I'd say, I can't remember the name of the ranch, the specific name of the ranch. Salmon River Ranch, something like that.
Yeah.
I'd just say, "Salmon River Ranch, this is West Fork." And they'd answer, and I'd say, "I'm getting close to Corn Creek, got supplies to be taken down." And they'd be, "Okay, stand by." And I'd go down there, and about the time I'd get there, the jet boat would show up.
Cool.
And we'd offload the stuff, and they'd take it down. And sometimes they'd already planned it, because they wanted us to come at a certain time of the day and everything, try and get down there before noon.
Oh.
So the jet boat would have already gone down to tie in with the guys, and then they'd help load up the empty coolers that we'd taken down, 2 days before or whatever, broken pumps, whatever. And then they'd come up, and then they'd arrive about the time I got there, and we'd offload all the stuff to put on the jet boat, and all the stuff that I had to take as backhaul back and make the exchange.
Oh, cool.
And the way they'd go and the way I'd go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. I really like it down there. I mean, that canyon is so steep and so spectacular. And having fought fire down there, I know how dangerous it is.
Yeah.
They were lucky that they didn't have to go anywhere except stay right by the river, which was a good place to be.
Yeah.
But it's pretty scary down there, and there have been a lot of entrapments and a lot of fatality fires over the years down on that main Salmon River in the Middle Fork and that country. So some of the times when I'd be going down, it'd be a switch out day. So there'd be a new group of 4 or 5 West Forkers that would be going in to relieve the folks coming out. And so when the new folks were going down, and none of them had ever been down there before, when they'd make the switch, when I'd take them down, we'd be going through the canyon, and I'd be like, "Okay, picture yourself fighting fire down here," and you're looking up at these bone-dry, gigantic 1.5 mile high ridges and stuff that I mean, there's no safety zones. There's nothing.
It's like continuous fuel.
I'd quiz them. I'd be like, okay, you're here on a fire, and see that big rock outcrop way up there that's got 3 trees on it? Your fire's there. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? I just quiz them, you know.
Yeah. Pick their brains on it.
I don't know. What should we do? And well, not go up there. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if it rolls stuff down,
I was gonna say that's where a lot of people get in trouble is the rollout because it's so steep.
It's gonna come back up at you, and that's gotten a lot of people down in that country.
Yeah, totally. There's no way to outrun that, and like you said, there's no areas where there's just no fuel. You know, like a fuel break, so there's nowhere to go.
But that river is just so special, and you have to drive by every time on the way to Corn Creek. You drive by where the Middle Fork empties into Corn Creek, and that's true wilderness country way up in there too. And some of the times when I'd go by, the kayakers and rafts would be just about to join the main river, and then they'd float down to Cache Bar, which was where all those folks from those rafting trips and kayak trips would put out.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's,
man,
I never got tired of it. I mean,
I bet the color of the water too in the photos you took. Holy cow.
Yeah, some of the pools are just crystal clear.
Yeah, with a little bit of like a turquoise hue, right?
Really beautiful. And then, there's other times that place is also famous for gigantic thunderstorms during the summer that send torrential rain from thunderstorms down these steep drainages and just turn the river into brown mud.
Oh, man.
And there's a couple from last June. There's a Forest Service cabin down at Corn Creek, which has to do with administration of float trips and stuff like that, checking their permits and all.
Yep.
And the lady that worked down there has been there for a long time, and she knew a lot of people that I've known that worked at West Fork too. And she said that in June, there's a place called Poverty Flats.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a couple of old ranch houses there and stuff.
Yeah.
And up drainage from Poverty Flats, there'd been a big early June, mid-June summer thunderstorm that just dropped torrential rain, and it washed these big mud flows. And how it happened, they were just lucky, but it came between these ranches and houses and didn't touch them.
Whoa.
But just blew out the whole road that I was driving on,
and
it created this huge, a couple of them in different places, huge alluvial fan of mud and rocks out into the main river.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty tough country down there.
It is tough country. Oh, man. Usually those storms pop up in the worst time, like where it's like right about dark, you know?
And then one time when I was coming back, a thunderstorm occurred when I was coming back, and I was going through an area and I could see mud coming down onto the road. Not a lot, but mud coming down off this probably 15-foot embankment.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's not good. And I went a little further around the corner and a bigger one was splashing down over the road. And I was able to get through it, but it was actually putting a little bit of mud over the road.
Oh, geez.
So, I mean, you never know where it's going to happen down there. And so some other cars, not necessarily having to do with the fires, because there are little communities down there. So I'd flash the lights and, have them roll down their window, and I go, hey, about a mile back around the corner, there was some mud coming out on the road, so be careful when you go over there, and don't commit yourself until you make sure it's safe.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to wash out a road either.
That was a good gig, but I did that, and I delivered stuff, the same sort of food and supplies, to West Forkers out in the Magruder corridor. I did that for about 10 weeks.
Man, you had a long season last year then, huh?
Yeah.
Man.
And then I did all of the usual lookout openings and closings and that sort of thing too. So, I wasn't technically, as an ED, you're just paid for the job you're doing.
Yeah.
And so you don't get overtime as an AD, but you get pretty good pay and you get a lot of hours. And so I figured that between the volunteer hours and all the hours, because I was working 60, 70, 75 hours a week every 7 days.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That I worked probably only 250 hours shy of a 1039.
Jeez, man. I was wondering, because there's a big chunk of the summer where, just exchanging photos, but that's the only time I really talked to you because you're so busy.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, man, what a
Didn't
busy year.
get much of anything else done last summer at all. I was lucky to even get my tomato plants watered, because
Oh yeah.
I was going. I had to be at. I would report to West Fork after that first time period when Rose and I were doing stuff out of Darby. I'd report to West Fork at 7 a.m., sit in on the morning briefing with the crew every morning, and then Brett would have it figured out where if I was going to go to Corn Creek or wherever I was going to go, and then I'd, you know, load up whatever we had at West Fork that could go, and sometimes stop at Darby and pick up some things there if it was a Corn Creek gig, and go on down. So they were long days. I mean,
Yeah.
leaving the house at 6:20, to get down there by 7, and then working until 7 or 8 at night, and getting home, and having to get up early to go to West Fork again the next morning and stuff. So I didn't mind do it. I love that stuff.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? Yeah.
It's not like I haven't done it a million times before,
So, yeah.
But I really appreciate that they let me do that.
Yeah,
deliver
totally.
that food, and it's cool getting to hang out with the kids on the crew and
Yeah.
sit in on the briefings and that kind of stuff. It's neat. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. I talk about this quite a bit. Not so much on the podcast, but hang out with the young fire folks, the young kids on the fire crew. It keeps you young, because they're like brains are firing so fast, and they like are giving each other a hard time, and it's great.
And it's been this way all along, that they're really into hearing stories from their elders or whatever you want to call us, and they're like all amazed last year, season 49.
Yeah.
Like, my dad wasn't even born 49 years ago, or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But it's cool because they love the stories, and I've got plenty for them about a lot of the places where they're going on fires and things to tell them to watch out for, and just they love stories.
Oh, it's the best.
And I did too. I mean, I was older than them when I started. I was within a month of being 30 years old when I got my first job at Sula in '76 for Medicine Point.
Oh, yeah.
But nonetheless, I would pump those guys that had been around for a long time for information because I didn't know anything.
Yeah, same.
It's just brand new, just like the new kids.
Yeah.
Except I was older than they were.
Yeah.
And man, they were the ones that they'd been there, they'd done that, that's how you learn.
Absolutely, yeah. You learn through all your peers and your mentors, and they're still alive for a reason, so that they had some pretty close calls in their day, but they made great decisions and came on the better end of things. And because I was the same way. It's like, I think when you first come to fire, at least for me, like in guard school, you go over all the bad things that could happen to you. Like you kind of, that's how your intro is, and it's like, holy cow, like how do I keep from dying in this job?
Right.
And then so I think that's why it's so great having someone like you out there where it's like, oh, you've been doing it for 50 years, you're still alive. So it's like, like what'd you do? How'd you do? Like, what are you looking for? And then for me, and I bet these kids are doing the same thing. I'm just picking up those tips and I'm logging them. I'm like, all right, Rene said, when you're doing this, do that. And like the tree story up there in the salmon, off the Salmon River, you're like, yeah, just don't do it. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my fire career is just like when to not do it, when to not go,
If you feel like it's going to be dangerous and it's going to be chancy, you got the decision to not do it.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. That's the way it has to be.
And that could save your life right there.
Yeah.
Just not doing it.
Yeah, and since I was around for so much of that time period, and then we started closing lookouts up at the end of the season, of course, you have to have help from the fire crew to do that.
Yeah.
And so they helped open stuff, and then they helped close stuff at the end. And right toward the very end when I was there, everything was pretty wound up. People were all back from the fires. Oh, and to back up for just a second, Brett and Chris made sure that every single person on the West Fork fire crew got to go down to Corn Creek to those two fires down the river there, that every one of them got to go at one time or another, and almost all of them got to go a couple of times. And we had 20-person crews out there at West Fork, and 10-person fire modules and stuff like that of crew people most of the summer.
Oh yeah.
And they were from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Washington, Oregon. I mean, from all over the place. Yeah. Some from the Southwest, even Arizona and everything. And so it was fun keying them in on certain things. And if they were, I'd ask them, where are they sending you today? Oh, we're supposed to go out past this old ranger station called Magruder. And I'd tell them, well, you need to stop and look at that stone bridge. And
Yes.
if you get a chance, you drive in there and check the station out, and because I could give them a bunch of history about stuff. And even the folks that weren't kids, they love that.
Yeah.
It's like they're going to a place and here's somebody who has been around long enough that can tell them stories about things that happened out there and people that worked out there over the years. And fire folks are pretty into that kind of thing.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
we all always were, because we get to go to some amazing places.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff that you didn't know existed until you were there on a fire. And you're like,
Yeah,
oh,
and
this
you
is
meet
cool.
somebody like me who can go, oh, you need to stop real quick and look at such and such before you cross this bridge or whatever.
Yeah, because you might blow right past it.
Yeah.
Like if you're heading
And
up
then
to
they'd
Paradise.
come by like, God, I'm really glad you told us about that, because that was really cool seeing that old ranger station
Yeah,
and whatever.
And I think it makes you pause in your day, right? Because like I think you can get pretty mission orientated, where you're just like, that A to B, right? Like West Fork, got to go to Paradise or Observation Point, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you stop at Magruder, take it in a little bit, take in the weather a little bit because you're not in the truck anymore, and just like take a breath, enjoy the scenery, and then get back in your rig.
And Brett and Chris were cool with that. The job had to get done and stuff like that. But yeah, drive in and take a look at Magruder. Go down and look at the cabin at Paradise. Just you're here. You might as well see some of this country and see what we've got. And that, they're that West Fork country, they're just blown away when they get out there. It's just so cool.
Oh, it's special, man. The whole area, it's amazing.
That there's so much wilderness out there and so much wild country, and that it's still like that.
Yeah.
It's so special, because so many places you just don't have that anymore.
Totally, yeah. And the amount of history, I mean, even just in the past few years, that just being friends with you and stuff that I found at, like, talking to Josh, our radio guy, and then like David Hood and the old maps that we were checking out with the one was just phone lines, wasn't it? And which was cool. And then the other one was a map of all the old lookouts from 19
way back
something, like 19, I think.
All the sites and everything.
Yeah.
And then I was going to just say in relation to that, and then I'll stop on that subject, but I was there toward the very end when all the fires were done and the folks were back, and I wasn't delivering things anymore, but I was out there helping them organize things that were going to need to go back to the fire cache in Missoula.
Yeah.
So I'd spend a lot of time out there. And then Brett and Chris told me this one day that, hey, we're going to, this afternoon, starting at about 3, we're going to pull, because the whole crew was there. It was a day when everybody was there. We're going to pull everybody into the fire cache, to the warehouse, to the fire cache building where the crew meets every morning for the briefings, and do kind of like a after action review of the summer, of what happened this summer. And Brett let Chris, as the new AFMO, he's worked out to be he's a really good guy. He really knows his stuff.
Yeah, totally.
So he let it off, and he told the crew, he said, I've got some bullet points of things that I want to bring up to get you guys feedback on how you folks thought the season went as crew members. And he said, I want everybody on the crew, from you, who this is your very first season, to you, who this is your 12th season or whatever.
Yeah, I've been around.
I want feedback from everybody. So speak up. I don't care what you have to say. If you think certain things didn't go as well as they should, let's be constructive about it and give me feedback of why you think something didn't work, and what we could do better. Or if you think stuff did go really well, I'd like to know that too. So they went over all kinds of stuff, and the crew was cool. I mean, they did it. They didn't really have much bad to say, because man, they had a kick-ass summer and got to do a lot of really cool stuff. And like I said, a lot of training, a lot of working together in neat places and
safe,
hard work. And they didn't have any. I don't think they had any lost time injuries.
That's what I was just thinking.
All of that last summer that I remember hearing about.
I didn't hear anything or any close calls or anything like that. So
fall down once in a while. I mean, I even
steep
did
terrain,
that. Yeah, I even did that when I was doing my stuff. You'd trip or something, but it was cool. It was cool, and they really did a good job. And then I had the opportunity at the end. I mean, I was there, and so Brett and Chris were cool, and it's like, I'd just like to say a few things about what I observed this summer, and I told them how the job that I felt Chris and David Fox and Brett did as the leaders was super cool. The way that they took care of the crew, the way in the morning briefings, and I sat in a lot of them, that they'd, give the crew feedback about the job they were going to do, and this is a dangerous spot, so, I want you guys to be careful with blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And that I said, you guys are really lucky. You're a really lucky fire crew. You work on an amazing district, and they all pretty much realized that.
Totally, yeah.
And you got to go to all kinds of really varied fires, and those that got there and were able to start working early enough also got to get involved in some of those control burns at the beginning of the season. And they got to get involved with some at the end too, after I wasn't there anymore. But yeah, you guys did a really good job. You were tight and together, and I'm just proud that I get to hang out with you.
Oh, that's very cool.
It was cool.
Yeah, and I bet they appreciate hearing that too, man.
It was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, and setting up for success, and then having someone with the amount of knowledge you have. I mean, I don't know anybody off the top of my head that is coming up on their 50th year in fire. Rene? So you're a pretty rare breed, my friend.
Too many of us around, I don't think.
I don't think, man. Most.
I'm just glad. I mean, I don't go on the line anymore. We all know that. And when I stopped at the end of 2016, that was the year I turned 70. I went to 2 fires. They were easy ones, but I went to 2 fires after I turned 70, and that was my last year taking the pack test. And I realized that I'm not dangerous, but I can't keep up with those kids in hiking into fires and stuff like that. And the last thing I would ever want to do, and I had talked to Doug and Brett about this, before I stopped, the last thing I would ever want to do was, just because I felt I wanted to keep doing it, get into a position where I'd endanger the folks on the crew, because they had to either watch out for me or make sure that I was okay, because I can't hike that fast,
Yeah, totally, man.
So I can hike, but I have to do it at my own pace.
Catches up with us all, but being 70 years old and still on the fire line, man.
I'll be 79 on June 30th.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
But it's cool stuff, and I realized it was time, but I still was able to. All those years before last year, we didn't do a single air patrol flight last year because I lost the contract.
Yeah.
But from 2017 until the year before, 2023, some of those years I did like 26 flights, and did a lot of that, and got to do all the lookout openings and closing, and delivering some fuel and doing things like I just talked about. So it's been really cool, and I'm really appreciative. Awesome. Everybody needs to make some money, And,
yeah, totally.
Well, and the fact that they trust me to do it and are letting me do it, and it's a help to them, it's cool.
Yeah, I was going to say it definitely goes both ways, because I know everyone in the force appreciates having you around, and also you're happy. You're not like an old burnout fire guy who's like,
I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, you're excited still. You still have the energy that I think a lot of us still carry, and because once it's not fun anymore, it's like, what are you doing here? And there's been some people who have that 5 years in.
A lot of them get real grumpy and stuff, and you don't really want them around. I've been around folks like that, are way younger than I am. And they're
That's what I was going to say. 5 years in, some of them.
That's just different personalities. Some people are just grouchy.
Yeah, just grouchy. and they kind of lose sight of how special it is, the job we get to do. We're out there getting to be stewards of the public land, getting to coach up the next generation, and getting to be out in nature as our job. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
And these different podcasts you and I have done, that comes up a lot. We really do get to do some pretty damn cool stuff. It's hard work.
It is hard work. You're earning it.
Not always, but a lot of it is hard work. But it's the working with your crew and taking care of one another, and just all of that stuff is part of pulling off a first class job.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great way to put it. First class job, and you never forget those hard times. Like the 12-mile hike.
Sometimes, in retrospect, those were pretty damn cool too.
Sometimes they're the most fun because someone says something that's kind of funny, and then everyone starts cracking up, and you're a little delirious, but everyone's having a good time.
You're tired, and you get loopy, and all kinds of funny stuff happens and everything. But you did some killer hike, and then you got to where you were supposed to go, and you had to dig line all night or something. And those are the ones you remember the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you pulled it off. You did it.
Yep, you did, and that's the biggest thing, right? Like the feeling of achievement, which I don't think a lot of people get in their job, is like that. It's like some of those tasks are like, I would say, Herculean tasks, like like a 12-mile hike into a fire that you said you'd dig all night, and if you don't, there might be a weather event coming that's gonna make that fire go off to the races, and then it's gonna take a lot more resources to put it out. So if you and the team get up there and just kick ass on it and put it to bed, and you get that satisfaction the next day, I mean, that's some real satisfaction you get.
Pull off a cool burn like some of those the Yellowstone stuff and other places that you just did an amazing job. You had luck in parts of it, but a lot of times you made a plan, and the plan worked because you thought it out, like what the fire was going to do, how it was going to react if you burned the certain area or whatever, and you did it, and it secured a giant chunk of line.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was the first piece of line on a 200,000 acre fire that got secured, and we did it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty freaking cool.
So cool. And you can even take little pauses during it, as like where it's like you got 20 people or maybe even a little more if you got a couple of resources working together, and you're just working as this smooth oiled machine, and it's just like, man, we're getting some work done, and you can feel it. Like you can feel like we're gonna get this, and that's like an awesome feeling.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Oh, but anyway, that's pretty much what happened,
Yeah.
And then we haven't got too much more, but what I was going to say was just a matter of a few weeks ago, within the last month, Cash Gibbons, Soup of the Hot Shot Crew, you know him.
Great guy.
Yep, really good guy.
Yep.
He got a hold of me because he and I had collected quite a bit of information about the formation of the Hot Shot Crew over those years, that I was on from 85 through 95.
Yeah.
And so I was able to share some stuff with him, and then he found other things. And so he had planned this, and he pulled it off. His plan within this last month was to there's a national Hot Shot Crew website.
Oh, yeah.
And all of the crews in the whole country, I don't know how many there are now. In 93, I think when we went to Malibu for a fire, there were 45 Hot Shot Crews in the whole country, and now there's 100, and I don't know how many, but over 100 for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And so this website is devoted to Hot Shot Crews, and each crew has a portion of this website with historical stuff about their crew.
Cool.
And so, Bill Miller had started that when I was on the crew with some of the stuff we had collected and things that I learned from Crockett out at Sula when he had the crew out there and whatever. And it's been kept up over the years, not every year, but it was time that Cash wanted to update it.
Yeah. So
he started putting stuff together, and I went and visited him, and we talked about what he wanted, and then I went home and got the thumb drive out that had all this stuff on it that he had too, and started delving through it, and he wanted crew name lists if we could find them. Well, we had name lists for, I think, crew from the first one from 63, 64, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we had the name lists for all of those.
Wow,
and
that's
then
impressive.
Then there was a period of time where there weren't any name lists other than the soups, or foremen they were called in the old days.
Oh, gotcha.
Those folks, and maybe some of the squad leaders. But for recent years, starting when Jim Leverton started working at Darby in 1976, when I started working at Sula in 1976.
Oh.
And 76 was the first year that the Hot Shot Crew came to Darby, and it's been based out of there ever since.
Oh.
So Jim, as a rookie, the very first season in 76, he got to make 2 trips to the Salmon with them.
Oh, wow.
So he met a bunch of folks on the crew, and then he was on the crew the next year and through 86, 84, 5, 6, when I was involved in the beginning in 84, just on a couple of roles.
Yeah.
And then he was with me on the crew as he was the senior squad boss, so he acted as the assistant.
Oh, gotcha.
And so he remembered the names of the folks during his tenure who were the squad bosses and stuff. And then right before Jim, well, Boggs came, William Boggs, you know, who you met up at Salmon, one of the founders of the Salmon Mountain Group. Yeah. Boggs had been on the crew, and he remembered some of the names. So we were able to put together a list of the names from starting in probably 77 until now. We've got a complete list of the overhead for the crew.
That's awesome.
And then there's a gap in, for some reason, there just weren't a lot of name lists of people that were on the crew. But when I started, I had them for every one of those years.
Oh, yeah.
And they've kept them since then, you know. So anyway, Cash redid this write-up. I've got a copy of it here. And, yeah, he just kind of did with some of the information I'd given him of some of the fires that were famous that the crew's been involved in, like the 3 Yellowstone fires and the Long Tom Complex fires on the Salmon of 1985, and us making the first trip out of the United States in 95 when we went to northern Alberta.
Yeah.
And then they've done that a bunch of times since, you know, to Canada and other places. But he wove all this into this write-up, which is really cool.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and then he wanted crew emblem things if I had any. Well, I had old T-shirts and different things. So on the back page of it, people can't really see this, but on the back page of it, I sent him some screenshots of some of our different shirts over the years. And so he included that stuff in this write-up too.
That's cool.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He gave me some pretty cool kudos for helping him, and he certainly didn't have to do that, but it was nice that he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're a big part of it, Rene. I mean,
that's good stuff.
Yeah, it wouldn't be complete if you weren't involved, you know?
Yeah, and then, you know, we haven't got too much more to go, but so you and I have been talking about this a little bit. The 19th of this month, which is a Saturday, there's going to be a Forest Fire Lookout Association sponsored. Well, they're involved with it, but it's called. See what the title is here. It's in Moscow, Idaho, at the University of Idaho, National Interdisciplinary Lookout Conference.
Very cool.
And so Mark Moak and Rep Moak, who will be staffing Hills Half this summer instead of Spot, they're going. Bill Moore is going.
Very cool.
And I'm going. And we're going to be one of the panels that talk about certain subjects. And they're going to cover all kinds of stuff. And the guy who's in charge hasn't put out the list of the order that for these different panels are going to speak in. I think everybody has not a real lot of time. It's only a one-day thing. It has about an hour. Yeah. So, you know, I have to kind of limit what you're going to talk about. But it's going to be talked. I know some of what ours is going to be on. Bill Moore is going to talk about helping set up the Diablo volunteer group.
Yeah.
You know, how that worked. And Mark and Red are going to talk about some of the differences in lookouts as far as architectural designs and stuff like that. And then they wanted me to talk briefly about how we take care of the lookouts on the Bitterroot. So what I'm going to do is basically talk about, and it's specific more to West Fork because that's where I've really been involved the most with the lookout program since 2001 till now, about how we figure out what they're going to need for the start of each season, how we close things up, what we take up at the end of the season so we don't have to take it up in the beginning, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to do a little blurb on that.
Well, that'd be great. And to give folks another little teaser on that point, it's like you said, taking at the end of the season, like the firewood that we did at Salmon, and then even the shutters, you know, like, hey, these shutters we need new shutters here, you know, get new shutters put on for the next season. And which, as you know, and most people know about lookouts, that shutters are a big part of keeping a lookout in good working order.
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then, like I said, I think next week, he said the guy who's in charge is going to send out the syllabus or whatever you call it of what each of the groups is going to do, and then I'll know more about that.
Cool.
But it's going to be pretty fun. Mark and Rhett and Bill Moore and I are going to all stay in a motel that's called the Monarch, which is right off the campus there.
Perfect.
So it's within walking distance of where this is going to be.
Oh, that'd be great.
And we're going to go over. It's going to be on a Saturday, so we're going to go over on Friday. So we'll be there Friday night, and then be there for the conference on Saturday, and spend Saturday night, and then drive home on Easter Sunday.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, so it'll be it'll be interesting after this all comes out, because I'll have more information then.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be great, man. I wanted to go real bad, and I'm still on the fence. I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it, but if I do, I would plan on going over Friday night as well. And I'll probably drag this thing along. And I was telling Kevin and Kelsey Roach, they lookouts on Corral Hill, and they were on my podcast with their family a little while back, and they invited me to come park this at their place and hang out with them.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, still trying, but we'll see. It's a lot of stuff going on right now.
Yeah. So not too much more.
Yeah.
But a couple things I wanted to bring up.
Yes, please do.
This has been rumored for many a year, and it finally happened. The 4th edition of Ray Kressick's Lookout Bible.
Oh,
It's in a new format. It's now got a spiral binding. It's much larger. The original books that he came out with of this were a book. It was smaller, so the print's bigger in this. It's he actually included some color photos, a few in places inside of it, and a little bit more detail on certain things that has surfaced over the years. He did an addendum every so often. I'd send him information from the Bitterroot when I'd find out that we'd find some document that mentioned a certain place on West Fork as having been used as a lookout point that wasn't in the book.
Yeah.
And so he'd keep track of that stuff. Well, a lot of it's in now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but this is the new one. So the 4th edition, this is probably it, man.
Yeah, I was a little worried that it was never going to come out.
Yeah. And so it's actually being published by the Stevens County Historical Museum over in Washington. It's mentioned in the back of the latest issue of Lookout Network.
Cool.
Gary Weber, is the secretary and the one who helps create this every year.
Yeah, Gary Weber's
and
the man.
last fall, he started putting in little rumors in the editions, like, there's a chance Ray's going to come out with the 4th edition. Stand by,
Very cool.
And so he did, and then he's got a little thing about it in here too.
Yeah, man, Gary's done a ton of homework on it too. I mean,
I can't remember how much it cost, and I really don't care.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you.
But I bought 2 of them.
Yeah,
just because
smart.
I figured I would.
And
inside of them, this was a bookmark.
Oh, whoa.
Which I have a bunch of at home. This was a bookmark, but on the back of the bookmark. And he had one of these in the 2 he sent me, and I assume in ones he sent to everybody.
Yeah.
But on the back of him, he wrote something, and what he said was, in his own handwriting, stories told are now 40 years older. So it's been that long since the first edition came out. Stories told here are now 40 years older. A unique piece of Northwest history. Enjoy. Ray Kressick, December 2024.
Very cool.
So I sent him an email. I still stay in touch with him. I sent him an email after I got these, and I said, Ray, I just ordered and just got two copies of, volume, or not volume, but of 4th edition.
Yeah.
And I love them. They're cool.
Oh, they're cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it, because I remember when it first came out, because you sent me something on it, and then I want to say Kevin and his wife Kelsey sent me like a thing on it, and it just kind of slipped my brain. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick one of those up. And then I think Kat and Billy too, the Idaho Fire Lookout folks, they're gonna be there at Moscow, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Man, it's gonna be a great.
Yeah,
time.
Billy and Kat.
Yeah, Billy.
Yeah,
and
they're
Kat,
going to be there. Yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch of folks there. Leif Haugen's coming.
Is he?
I think he's going to be on with our panel.
God, yeah. I've
too.
been wanting to connect with Leif ever since.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Ever since he
builder, lookout, restorer extraordinaire. Yeah, he's really got that stuff wired.
Yeah, and I might have mentioned this before, but he left a note on my truck one time when it was at the Good Food Store in Missoula.
Huh.
And it was great. It was really cool, because I've heard a lot about Leif, and I've watched some of his specials on YouTube. So if folks want to know more about him, he's got some cool little videos on YouTube, like talking about lookouts and the day in the life. And he I showed you the note, didn't I? He wrote on it, and he said, really enjoy the podcast. Keep up the good work, especially enjoy the ones with Rene, and I think he maybe said Tanner.
He sent me one, and when he I think he listened to the first 3. The third one was the one that we talked the whole time basically about lookouts, and I read some excerpts from the interviews I'd done with folks from way back and everything, and he sent me an email and he said, man, I really liked those. That was cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I've been wanting to connect with Lee for a long time, so man, that makes me want to go even more.
He's a good one.
Yeah, he's great.
And really the only other thing, other than one thing at the very end of what I've got here, was that we're starting to get stuff together for the lookout meeting on June 23rd and 24th, which is a Monday and Tuesday. We call it lookout training. It's kind of really not lookout training because most of the bitter lookouts never leave.
Yeah.
So it's not true training on somebody knowing how to work the alidate and that kind of stuff. Every once in a while, Sophie was new this last year, but not new to being a lookout. She hadn't been one for about 10 years.
Oh.
But she knew the drill.
Yeah.
And so she was the newest, and there's going to be spot's going to be staffed by somebody from up in the northern part of Montana, and I haven't got his name yet.
Yeah, me either.
But he has experience too.
Oh, cool.
So when we have had somebody new, especially amongst like the volunteer groups or St. Mary's volunteer group, we would usually have them go up and visit Ellie on Deer Mountain because she's up fairly early because you can get to Deer Mountain pretty early.
Yeah.
And just have them spend a whole day with her, and she could show them the drill, how the alidade works, and the basic things you need to look for. But in this meeting, basically, what we do the first day we meet, and we're going to do it again. Cash and Jay before him have been super gracious about turning their training room over to us, whether they're there or not. They just mark out those 2 days that we've got that room.
Cool.
And we meet down there at Darby because it's kind of central.
Yeah.
And all the folks that can come from the different lookouts come, and we try and have Mark or Matt come down from the SO as the forest FMO, AFMO, and just, listen to we start it with having each person say who they are, what lookout they're going to be on, how long they've been doing lookout stuff.
Cool.
And then I'll do the same thing. And then we let one of them speak just shortly, just so that they hear who the people in charge are, but they never see them.
No.
And so they get to see them.
Very cool.
And, people ask them questions like, do you guys still support lookouts?
Yeah, I bet. That's a big question lately.
And they do. I mean, they do. They've been around long enough on this forest that they know the job that gets done and the quality of it and the number of fires that get found by lookouts and all the other stuff that they do besides find fires, like be a commo link for people that are out in the middle of nowhere who can't even hit a repeater.
Yeah.
And the lookouts relay, just all that stuff. So they're real supportive, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then we usually always, last year we couldn't because it snowed and we couldn't go, but we try and drive up to one of the drive-up lookouts. We were going to go to Lookout Mountain last year, and we have done that before, but we couldn't because there was a big snowstorm the night before.
Oh, yeah.
So we ended up instead taking the group up to Dispatch in Hamilton because a lot of them have only talked to those folks on the radio.
Yeah.
They've never been in the building. They've never seen what's in there, and what they do. And that's how I prefaced it when we went this last summer. It's like, okay, so let's just do a hypothetical scenario. I'm on Salmon Mountain Lookout and I spot a fire and I call in the legal to you. What do you do?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we go to this map and we immediately plot the legal that you've given us and mark it, send somebody down the hall to get the forest FMO or AFMO to come in and listen to see if you have any more information. And we start, doing computer stuff to get everything together. And we just kind of take it from there depending on what the fire does or doesn't do. We coordinate to get heli-tac involved or order jumpers or whatever.
Yeah.
So the folks loved it. I mean, that was cool
cool.
because most of them had never been in there before,
Yeah.
So that was a good way. We killed the day that way the rest of the day. And then the second day is usually just part of the day, and we're going to do the same thing again. Is that I'm going to do an abbreviated version of the RT-130, the Fireline Refresher,
Cool.
tailored for them.
Yeah.
Because they don't hike the fires or do any of that kind of stuff, but they're in the fire zone, and we've, for the past more than 20 years, we've been having these meetings. They did some before that, but we've done them every year, since then.
Yeah.
So it's important for you folks to review on this stuff too. So we go through at the beginning, what all the crews do. They get on we have the information from the website.
Yeah.
Lessons learned and stuff like that. About last summer we had X number of fires. There were, if there were any bad fatality fires or accidents, we kind of do a brief review of those.
Yeah.
Just so they're aware of stuff that's going on, not just right here, but nationally.
Totally.
And we talk about, our terrain and our country, and make sure that if there is somebody new, that they know, well, like this new person that's coming to Spot, he's going to have never been to Spot before.
Yeah.
And it's important for him to have some information on, there's a lot of burn out there now, but if something happens out there, depending on where the fire is, where would be a good place on the top of your mountain for you to be.
Totally.
If you have to abandon the lookout, and we make sure they all have fire shelters, they all have fire clothes, hard hats, all the stuff they need. But we talk about that, and then I bring West Fork's practice fire shelters.
Oh, cool.
We go out on the lawn. Last year we had to do it inside because it was wet, but we go out on the lawn at Darby there and do a practice deployment.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we do more stuff. So we also have the National Weather Service guys come down.
Oh, cool.
Right after the meeting in the beginning where we all give our names and everything. They do an hour-long presentation on fire weather and give the folks the latest prediction.
Yeah, predictive
3
services.
month predictive services thing of what, you can potentially expect both nationally and in the Pacific Northwest, in our part of the country.
Yeah, totally.
And then they leave. And that's the first day. But that second day, after we do the practice deployment, so this time, and we've done this a couple times before, but not for a few years, we're having the Fish, Wildlife, and Park bear spray specialist guy come down.
Perfect.
Yeah, and they give a talk about bear spray and bears and danger with bears and how to use the spray. Then we go out on the lawn, and he has the inert canisters that just do the spray, but no pepper or anything.
Yeah.
And everybody gets the opportunity to fire it. Okay, you stand over there. You're a bear.
Yeah.
The bear's coming toward you, and he shows everybody how to fire it and where you aim.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Man, it's good training. And
we alternate that. We haven't done that a real lot, but about every other year we also do either have somebody from one of the districts who is an EMT come and do a first aid thing.
Good. Yeah. That's important.
Yeah, and sometimes Scott Wooden does it because he's been an EMT for a long time. It works at West Fork with David.
Oh, yeah.
He'll put one for us West Forkers on out there.
Oh, nice.
But we do that stuff, and then that pretty much ends it, and then everybody's ready to rock and roll and
refreshed and ready to
go up to their lookouts or go back to their lookouts.
Yeah, and I think that's big too, because if you didn't do that, I mean, most everybody knows each other, but like you said, the new person on Spot, he probably knows that maybe some of the people, but maybe not everybody.
I don't think he knows any of us. I don't think.
That's what I was kind of thinking. So it's great. So then to put a face to a voice, because most of the time you're just talking the radio. So
and the cool part, he gets to meet Mark and Red have done lookouts for 43 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
The first 10 or so were down in Arizona.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they've been at West Fork since 97. Bearcone Mark has been at West Fork since 97 on Bearcone.
Oh, wow.
Christy and Jim have been on Lookout Mountain since, I think, 03 or 02.
Jeez.
And then the Salmon Volunteers, Boggs was a staff paid lookout on salmon when it was all still part of the Magruder District starting in 1971.
Oh,
so there's
man.
people on that district that have tons of experience.
Yeah.
And Mark and Brad and all of them will talk to them and let them know that if they have any questions at all, the cell phones work at all the lookouts. You can just call us up on the radio and we can walk you through whatever you need information on.
That's wild. I didn't know that all lookouts had cell coverage. That's cool.
Yeah.
Especially,
Salmon's the only one that's spotty, but it sounds like Brett's going to be able to hopefully get them a cell booster this summer.
oh, nice.
All the others have one.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll help.
Yeah, so this guy will get keyed in on all of that stuff, and yeah,
he'll be
it's good stuff.
good to go. Yeah, great stuff, man.
All the districts are good quality stuff. Tanner's going to be back at Willow.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and the St. Mary's folks, some of them have been around for a long time, and
Yeah.
Sophie's not new, second year on teepee, but I mean she's done lookout stuff and was there for all those fires last summer and got some amazing photos.
Oh man, it's
of
so
some
good.
of the stuff that happened.
Yeah.
And then Sam's coming back to
Sula?
Peak.
Oh, very cool.
And this is probably Ellie's, God, I don't know, at least 20th year on Deer Mountain.
Yeah, she's been up to Deer for a while. Deer is one of my favorite, especially on the east side. Like, and maybe it's just because like the way Ellie has it, and like when you visit her, it's like this cool hang. But like the view from Deer is awesome too.
It is, and God, Willow's underrated. Willow has an amazing view.
Yeah.
I mean, it has an incredible view of the whole west side, and it looks way down on the West Fork too. It's every time I go up there, which isn't real often, but we did go up there 2 years ago. We took the group up there, and I hadn't been there for a while, and I'd forgotten what an incredible view that it does have.
Oh, it is incredible. Yeah, and Deer and Willow are kind of similar. That I think Willow's up a little higher, but they're kind of almost out on a little peninsula, so you get this cool view of the whole valley, on north and south.
Cool.
Yeah, great spot.
Yeah, it's really cool. The only other thing I was going to mention, so I don't know if you've ever heard of one of these. This is called a vertical angle scale.
No.
Have you ever heard of it?
No, I don't think so.
So when I was on Medicine Point, I was required to make one of these. They had required all new lookouts on Sula and West Fork for sure, up through when I started in '76 to make one of these. And so what a vertical angle scale is, it's a three-part deal. And it's hard to describe to you, but what it is there's 3 panels. And panel 1 starts at 360 degrees, which is north, and goes to 120 degrees. It's like the Alidade.
Oh yeah.
Right, and then the next panel goes from the 120 to 240, and the third panel goes from 240 to back to 360.
Oh yeah.
And so, one of the ways that helped all of us lookouts to learn our country was to create a vertical angle scale map of the terrain. And I don't know that I can actually do this and show people in a way, but I'm going to let you look. So what you would do, you would start it at 360 degrees. That you would just follow the complete way around. So you would move the Alidade in tiny, tiny increments on this, parts of a degree, and then you on this map you would draw the outline of what ridgetop you were seeing.
Oh.
And then after you got the top ridge line all the way across, then you'd start working on the drainages that were within that 360 to 120. And well, this is just an example of mine.
Holy cow. There's some really good detail in here, Rene.
It took a lot of time to create that. And so that was one of the things that Crockett's like, you need to spend at least an hour every day, unless there's fires, and that takes precedence, working on this. Because what it does too, Luke, is that you start learning the terrain because you've drawn. That isn't everything. That's just the main stuff online. And you start learning the terrain. But what's really cool about these is that if you spot a fire in the dark, you can look at this map, and if you have enough detail on it, when you swing the Alidade to whatever the alidade says is the degrees and minutes. You can find them on here. And, there's a vertical angle scale that's on the alidade on the one end.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's one spot in the middle of it, which is that terrain that's straight out from you.
Oh, yeah.
If it's higher than that, and the fire is below, then you know that it's below your horizon, your horizon on the alidade.
Oh, yeah.
If it's above, you'll know that it's higher. So in the pitch dark, if you can pinpoint on the alidade where a fire is, you can look on this vertical angle scale, and if you've got enough detail there, you can pretty much see where the fire is.
Yeah, and even like the fuel type, because I saw you have like an all timbered area on there on the map and stuff like that too. That's cool.
This is part of Medicine Point's catwalk. These two. Let's see, there's another little piece over here. That block the view. I don't know, and you probably can't see this really, but
might be able to make it out a little bit there.
But some of these, I've got copies of them. When I got to West Fork, I found a whole bunch of these, and we had a color plotter printer thing, and I made copies of a bunch of them. And some people, I was only up there that one season, so this was actually pretty good for one season.
Absolutely.
But some of those people that repeated, they'd work on this again the next season, and they had different color shadings in them and stuff. They're really cool. I've got them in one of my lookout boxes of memorabilia and things, for projects and all that that I never completed, but I've got to pull some of them out, and if I find some, I'll show them to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it, because I bet they're like artwork, huh?
They're pretty cool.
Man.
They're pretty cool. But yeah, so this was one of the ways that helped you learn drainages, and at first it didn't make much sense when Crockett would try and describe it, and so, you'll have the alidade's going to show you the angle, and you'll know on the vertical angle scale whether it's up or down from your location. And the more stuff you plot on here, you can find things in the dark. I mean, you can call them in even in the dark.
I had no idea. That's really smart.
But I don't think anybody does this anymore. I've never heard it ever even mentioned anymore. But they used to make folks do this back in the day as a training aid to learn your country, because you're staring at it while you're making all these lines and drawings and stuff of different drainages and everything.
Yeah. That's very cool.
So anyway, I'd been meaning to bring this and show you at some point, so this worked out to be the good day.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, man. That's that's very cool. I never heard of one before. So, it's great to see that and hear about it.
Pretty neat stuff.
Yeah, great tool too. Holy cow.
Yeah. That's about all I've got, really.
Well, thanks, Rene. Thanks for coming on, man. And 50 years here, 50 years fighting fire, man. That's so impressive. We're so lucky to have you, my friend.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm pretty honored to still be able to do what I can do.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know better than to. I suppose if I happened right along a fire and I could stomp on it, I'd still do it. But you know what I mean. But that isn't my function anymore. And, still being able to be involved with the lookout program, and especially with the West Fork lookouts, and getting to go to salmon and, be up there for 4 or 5 days every summer is a good thing. And,
well, yeah, and it's just you're adapting, right? Because that's what you do as a fire person, whether in your first year, your 50th year, you're adapting to your abilities, right? Like, you're not getting overextended. You're not going to get yourself in a bad situation. And that's just what you're doing right now, in your 50th year versus, in your 15th, you had a little more capability back then. But it'd be the same way if you only had an engine and you were trying to, attack a giant fire. It's like, there's only 3 of you. What are you going to get done? What you're going to get done is keep yourself safe and maybe try to establish an anchor point and then call on more resources, You just do what you can. And that's exactly what you're doing.
But it's cool. I'm still loving it. I'm loving it just as much as ever. So it's,
Yeah. Well, it's contagious, like I said earlier, man. And that's what's another intangible thing that you bring to the table. I mean, all the other tangible things for sure are huge help. Like all the stuff you did this last summer, just bringing around, supplies, all the fires and knowledge. And, well, it's intangible knowledge stuff, but those intangibles, like the knowledge and the energy and expertise, it's very valuable. And I'm so glad you're sharing with folks.
Thanks. I miss the flights a lot. I don't know if we're going to ever have any more just because of the changes and all that stuff. But, I got 259 in over the years. So,
man, that's awesome.
Yeah. And that was, we've talked about that in one of the episodes at quite length. It's like being an aerial lookout.
Yep.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't in competition with those guys because I am one of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just another, like another tool in the tool belt, I guess. But I want to see more of it. It's more of like another aspect to fire, because like we're all just like pieces of the puzzle that help put out a especially large fire or
And
any
most
fire.
of the
Really.
ones we would find from the plane were ones that were in places where the lookouts couldn't see, behind ridges and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. Blind spots.
And we'd find them, because they would find them, if they got big enough to put up a smoke column over a ridge, they wouldn't be able to probably pinpoint its exact location, but they'd be able to give a line of sight to it on the alidade and have a pretty good guess of where it's are. Last summer, Christy, she's got that Lookout Mountain country so wired that, you know, Brett and the others mentioned this, that she'd take a guess, like she could see a smoke out east of Lookout Mountain behind a couple of ridges, but she's been there so long that she'd have a pretty educated guess of what drainage that was in. And she was right virtually every time when the helicopter would fly out there to actually go scout it and see if there was a road near it or whatever.
Yeah.
She was right on.
Just nailed it.
Yeah, it might be a little bit off, but, because if it was down below, the smoke might be moving a little bit from coming straight up from the actual site.
Yeah, a little drift.
But she was pretty darn accurate.
And talk about a time saver there, right? Like you send out a helicopter, or Helitech or whoever to go check it out, and if you don't really have an idea of where it might be, they could be doing circles for a while, and especially it's only doing like little wisps.
Yeah.
But she puts the most pinpoint on it. They can direct their attention to that one area until they see something puff up.
Yeah, and Mark and Rhett and Bear Cone Mark and all of them have done that. Salmon, all of them have done that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to have experience.
Yeah, we're blessed in many senses, but definitely in that sense is the having such great lookouts and just great folks in general. They're all great.
They really, really, really care about the firefighters that are out there in the woods too. I mean, like I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that I've been on lots of fires where I didn't have a good view of anything beyond the little fire that I was on, and they'd check in every evening, or they'd sometimes be established that you're in Bear Cone's country, so it's going to be your night contact.
Yeah.
And they'd call before we'd call. We were required to call and tell them when we were going off the line and when we were going to be in camp and shut down for the night, if we weren't going to dig line all night or something.
Yeah.
And they'd be, copy that. I'll have the radio on all night. If I have anything to relay to you, weather-wise or whatever, I'll let you know. And if you have any needs, call me. I can call medevac. I can do anything you want,
Yeah.
And they do that, and they'd help us out.
Oh, huge, man.
I mean, I remember specifically being on a fire. Skylar and I were on one, and Bill Miller, my super from the hotshot crew, who was retired then and was doing safety officer stuff as an AD, we were out in this fire, and Bear Cone Mark called us he called me at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like, Rene, are you awake? I'm like, I am now.
Yeah, I am now.
He said, you're probably going to have a thunderstorm come right over you within about a half hour. I've been watching it, and its track is going to bring it right to you, and my guess is a half hour from now. Copy that. So we all got up, and we walked around the part of our fire, and kind of just kicked a few logs and made sure it was as good as it could be.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the storm rolled right over. Fortunately, it had a bunch of rain with it, but yeah, I mean, we would have never known until it was there.
No, until it was on you.
We were actually able to get up and go do a little bit of work on a couple of parts of the fire that we thought might be a little chancy,
Yeah, secure things up
cool.
a little bit. Yeah,
that's what those lookouts do.
Oh,
I mean, they don't just spot fires; they take care of you.
Yeah, they do, and like you said, they really care. It's the feeling's mutual. Boots on the ground, care about them.
They are part of the fire crew.
Yeah, 100%.
They're as much a part of the fire crew as any of us that go out and dig line.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and the crews feel that way too.
Yeah. I always felt that way too, and just having those extra set of eyes up there on the hill, because if you're any crew has their own lookout that they put up on big fires, or if you're out there in the middle of nowhere, so.
Tim mentioned that on one of his recent lookout podcast, or not lookout podcast, but his
Hotshot Wake Up
segments, where he talked to a guy that had been on lookout in Oregon and knew some stuff about cameras and satellites and upcoming potential things and this, that, and the other. And Tim brought up, he said, hey, man, there's a place for lookouts. There's always a place for lookouts. And he said, I can tell you, I can remember going on fires and drive-up lookouts, and they'd send us as a hotshot crew before we went to a fire to drive up to this point and have the lookout show us where the fire was and what the terrain was like and all that sort of thing. And the information was invaluable. And we go down and, a lot of times there were a fire that we could get pretty close to driving. And the lookout would say, I will watch the whole time you're going down that way. If I see anything I don't like, I will call you on the radio. So they'd establish contact. And when they got down to their stopping point, modern times, they'd GPS it, and he could look on his map and know exactly where they were and how far they had to hike into a fire, and he or she would be their eyes, and they were like, we're so appreciative of that stuff. You can't tell me lookouts aren't valuable.
Yeah, talk about,
because a camera isn't going to do that.
No, it's not going to talk to you.
A satellite's not going to do that. It might find something, but it's not going to talk to the people on the ground and give them that helpful advice that's going to be part of their safety plan.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Safety is the biggest thing there, man. And
so it's cool that he said that. He's a pretty respected guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very knowledgeable. And it sounds like the guest he had on too was a wealth of knowledge. So if folks want to get some more info on that one, I think the title is even like was it like Human Lookout versus
it was one of the recent ones, not too long ago. A couple weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah. So folks want to hear more about that, and
I listened to it. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of listened to a little part of it. I meant to go back and listen to the whole thing.
I think I told Steven, people that live in places where they can do this, if they're interested in your podcast, you can listen to them, watch it on your phone or an iPad or whatever. But since I had the link, where I could. My friend Steve down there, who's a retired college professor, he knows I'm doing this one with you right now.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
When I went down there, I showed him how to find the podcast, and he listened. I was down there for 2 months at Tina's place. He listened to all of them, and I told you, I said, Steve figured out how he could Bluetooth to his big television screen the podcast from his phone to his television, and he could watch the podcast with you and me and stuff on his big screen.
Oh, very cool, man.
And I told you that, anybody that has one of the newer good televisions that has that Bluetooth capability, you can send stuff from your phone to it, or straight from your computer to the phone to it. Sometimes there's like a little part-second lag in the speech because I guess the signal or whatever. But nonetheless, it doesn't impede the quality of it.
Totally.
So Steve watched him. So he said, well, you got to tell me when you get done with Luke tonight when he thinks he's going to tell you that it's up and running. And
this should be up on Sunday.
So Sunday. I'll know, and I'll let you know because he wants to watch it. So
perfect. Yeah, April 6th,
shout out for my pal Steve.
Yeah, shout out Steve. Thanks for watching, man. Yeah. Well, shoot, Ray, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's fun as usual.
Yeah, and I got some more ideas for us to do a few more down the road, like we talked about, just lookout hopping and going from each lookout and interviewing the ones we could drive to and interview the lookout and have you co-host it with me, and
that'd be fun.
Yeah, so we got that in the works, and then one of these days the Yellowstone fire alone, it is such an interesting story, and your experience on that is very
we could
cool,
do one for sure. I could bring some journal stuff from the different fires and some photos to jog my memory while we're talking about it.
Yeah, because you sent me that one photo of warming up some coffee, and
it was pretty. It was the biggest thing so far at that point in my fire career. I mean, the stuff on the Klamath was amazing, and down on the Salmon the first season in '85. But it was Yellowstone Park. Come on,
yeah, man, that's hard to beat. Going to territory that not too many people have seen.
An article the following spring from National Geographic that had that big fold-out photo I showed you, that wall of flames.
Yeah.
So all any experienced firefighter could do was walk away.
Yeah.
But
That's a
that,
great
and,
line.
yeah, and then just it was pretty cool being able to experience that
Yeah, no,
because it was Yellowstone.
exactly. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's had that experience. It's very
Yeah,
cool.
It was really something.
So I look forward to those, and thanks again, Rene. Thanks for coming on, and
You bet. It's great as always.
yeah, awesome, always a good time, and thanks,
Yeah.
folks, for tuning in. I appreciate you.
Thanks, folks.